to expect. Needle in the hay.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities and Music. Today we're going to review a throwback, the second part of our 90s indie album throwback. This is Elliott Smith's second album, his self-titled album. And this came out in 1995. Elliott Smith is an independent singer-songwriter who is very critically acclaimed. A lot of underground fan love for Elliott Smith. And he committed suicide in 2003. And left a suicide note that misspelled his own name. But you can read more about that on Wikipedia. This is about the music. So this album, it's all acoustic guitar. And what I did want to explain before we get into it real quick. The Gay Parade, which we reviewed yesterday, or for you guys, you would have seen it yesterday. And then this album, Elliott Smith, actually tied in our vote. We post every 2 weeks when we're making our schedule. We have you guys help us out. We always have a couple albums for you guys to vote on. And we always give it about 48 hours, maybe 72 hours if we're really looking for votes. Usually we have a clear indication of which is, seriously, this had 37 apiece. I don't know what to say. That's a dead tie. And so since Tom put up some pretty hard album riddles.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
sorry.
alright.
Never
It's
again.
alright. It's the Blue Man Group. What can you do?
Yeah.
And anagrams and things like that. We're going to work with you guys a bit on that. But since nobody won, well, technically I won. We're going to do both of Elliott Smith and the Gay Parade. So this is a two-parter that we decided would be kind of cool to do.
Yeah.
Anyways, this album, tons of acoustic guitar, and Elliott Smith's very iconic vocals, or he's just whispering at you. And then you have it, but this album is so noted for how you can play an acoustic guitar and make it sound so dynamic, to make it sound so full and intriguing, how you can write such complex songs with such minimalistic sounding acoustic guitar. It's very intriguing is a good way to put it. And I've always found that this album, self-titled, has been very intriguing. Definitely not Elliott Smith's most flashy material, and very dark lyrics. A lot of drug references and a lot of very personal lyrics and self-introspection and all that fun stuff that a lot of people get into. It's moody acoustic music, and that's just something that I'm naturally drawn to. Tom, what was your take on Elliott Smith's
Well, here's the thing. I feel like kind of latecomer because I'd never really listened to Elliott Smith, honestly. And I know that's probably going to shock a lot of people, especially considering the music I make sounds like it would be influenced by Elliott Smith.
It does, doesn't
but
it?
It's not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can tell this is a very Nick Drake influence. I love Nick Drake. You can tell that Elliott Smith has really influenced Bright Eyes, a lot of that kind of acoustic-based indie scene.
Right.
But so late to the party, but better late than never, I'd say, and I really enjoyed this album. And the thing that I love that really put it over the edge for me, beyond just the clearly good songwriting, is the production. And I haven't done a lot of research on what people have said about this album and why it's good. Maybe this is something that people have already noticed widely, maybe not. But the production and the way things are mixed and panned is what makes it. Because I was thinking about it, and I noticed, almost every track, you've got the double-tracked vocals that are hard panned to the speakers. So instead of things coming at you right from the center, they're coming at you right here, right from the side. So the effect that has is very interesting, because through this all, I was really trying to think, now, how would this change the listening experience if the vocals were coming to me from the center? And the difference it would have is it would feel like more of a distant performance. A guy with an acoustic guitar on a stage singing to you while you're in the kind of blending into the crowd. Whereas this, the vocals are coming at you from the side. It's like Elliott Smith is the devil and the angel on your shoulder talking to you at the same time. And because of those whispery vocals, it makes it so intimate and so personal on a level that you don't get from any other acoustic artist. And the thing is, Oh, I completely lost my thought.
No, but that's a really good point, and to think that
I'll
he
get back
did
to
that, to think that he did this, Tom, in 1995. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we made the comment. Gay Parade came out in 1999, and I commented that one of the things that maybe was a downside of that album was the really lo-fi production, which I like about it, but I know some people would probably criticize that album for having such a lo-fi kind of shifty production. Where this is 95, technology really jumped in the late 90s. So, you're going 4 years back in 1995, and here you have much less technology and computers and internet and stuff. And for indie artists, that makes a big impact. Not as much for the major label acts, but for indie labels, that makes a big impact. And for this album to be as well produced as it is, back in an age where it was a little bit more difficult to produce an album, I think that's pretty exemplary.
And it just matches the writing. It's so good.
Right.
And the thing is, not only does he go through every effort to eliminate all space between him and the listener, to get as close to them as possible, but he even brings it to your attention at the very beginning of the album. Needle in the Hay, the first track, one of the first things you notice is the guitar starts center, and then slowly splits to left and right channels. And right there, it's like he's flagging you. He's saying, hey guys, pay attention to this. Pay attention to how the guitars and vocals are going to be panned throughout this whole album, because it is the key. To me, at least.
Completely agree. And one thing that I think a lot of people, as if you haven't listened to a lot of Elliott Smith, and specifically this comment's directed towards our friend Quinn, but I think a lot of people can probably gain benefit from if you haven't listened to Elliott Smith in the past, is that this album, and this album in particular, is not inherently catchy. There's not a lot of really just vibrant choruses. The choruses that exist are there, but they're very subtle, and this has a lot of brooding emotion and everything here. Even the good instrumentation, I mean, you have to dig at a little bit to understand what he's doing and why he's doing it, and understand aspects like the production.
Yeah.
It's not intrinsically, catchy, so I think people that are looking for flashy acoustic singer-songwriter stuff are going to be a little bit turned off at first, but I think that those who are patient enough to really dig at what this is doing and how Elliott Smith wrote this album and these tracks, which I'll get to that part in a second, but I think they're in for a very rewarding listen. It's an album that can grow over time, because this certainly has for me. Now, one thing that I do want to note, and this is something that I would have preferred been elaborated on a little bit, is that I feel like there's 12 tracks on this album, and I really feel like those 12 tracks are exactly that, 12 tracks. I feel like it's just 12 singer-songwriter tunes jammed together on an album that kind of document a period of time, maybe, in Elliott Smith's songwriting, and maybe he did some theming, especially with production and things, to bring them together in an album format, because I do feel like this is a strong album, but the theming isn't there. The songs don't blend together, they don't reference each other. There's just 12 tracks here. 12 good tracks, which is why it's a good album. But it's not mind-blowing. There could be more to it, and this is a very minor criticism overall, but something to think about.
I think the thing for me is that, and I see actually 3 of your track picks are in the last half. The last half for me, I feel like there are less noteworthy songs, or fewer noteworthy songs, rather. I mean, just, they get a little more forgettable.
I think they get a little bit more emotional.
I think
that the instrumental,
especially the last 2.
Right. Yes, the last song, The Biggest Lie, is very emotional, and I tend to like that, because that's what I'm looking for in that dark, moody singer-songwriter stuff. Now, the instrumentation, I think, is more weighted to the front half.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that's
with that.
a lot of what you were listening to, especially with the production, and what you do as you make a lot of music that's similar to Elliott Smith, or like Elliott Smith's-esque moods and stuff. So that's something to consider too. So that's another really good insight, and something people should think about. Overall, I think this is a strong album, although not completely brilliant, not as brilliant as I think a lot of critics has painted him. Now, that's also not factoring in how influential Elliott Smith has been. Just looking at the album in comparison to music in general that we've been listening to, I go 83 on this.
I'm also going to go 83.
But it is important to note how important Elliott Smith, particularly this album and other Elliott Smith albums, have been in influencing singer-songwriters. Elliott Smith is also an artist that's one of those artists you can categorize. The sum of all of his work is definitely much greater than any one particular album.
Yeah.
That's definitely true for this guy. What did you guys think? What do you guys like Elliott Smith? Is this something that really has influenced you in your life? Please leave us a comment and tell us what your experience is and what your thoughts are on his self-titled album that came out in '95 and all the production aspects that we talked about. Is that something that you were being clued in on before? Leave us a comment at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and give us a comment. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Movie Music Critique Forward.
It can't help me get on.